All right, hello everybody. Welcome back. We are back this time, and I have with Drip Talk with Blake the Snake Roberts here once again. Uh, I have a very special guest. He is a former professional wrestler. He is also a second generation wrestler to a WWE Hall of Famer. His father is Bill Watts. He was one half of WCW and WWF Tag Team. Tekno Team 2000 with Troy, also known as Chad Fortune. He has wrestled for the WCW, WWF, ECW, TNA, NWA, and AGPW, and much, much more. He is Erik Watts, also known as Troy, or as Travis, sorry, in Tekno Team 2000. So we'll get him on in here, and then we will start. All right. Hello.
How's it going?
Going good. How about you?
Good, good, good. You actually had it right the first time. I was actually Troy, but it doesn't really matter, dude. It was Techno Team 2000. I think more people just knew the tag team than knew the personal names.
Yeah. And then last time I got it switched up with Techno Team 3000.
Hey, listen, a promotion's a promotion, man. Just so you know, the reason they did that is when they brought us together, we were two like 6'6". I was 292. Chad was like 270. And we were doing like double leap throgs, double hip tosses. I was doing a no look reverse sunset flip off the top rope. I would catapult him on top of people, and Vince freaked out. And so when they came up with the idea, it was that we were going to be the tag team of the future, because I
Oh wow.
believe it was like 1995, right? And now here you and me are talking. You weren't even born yet, and so now you like, it's kind of funny. Maybe they should have called me Techno Team 3000. We gonna, because
Yeah.
now we're talking about that we were the tag team of the future, and shoot, 2000's long gone, right?
Yeah. That would have been probably better. Made more sense.
Yeah, it was fun. Hey, listen, it was fun either way, man.
Yeah, of course. So the first question I'm going to ask you is when did you start doing wrestling and what made you want to do it?
Um, Professionally, when I was a kid, I played a lot of sports, right? I amateur wrestled, I ran some track, did some soccer, played football, basketball. Towards my latter years, trying to specialize in things, I amateur wrestled basketball and football, in which I took a Division I scholarship in football. I had scholarship offers in basketball, but you know, I didn't play basketball really long,
Yeah.
and kind of it was weird. A guy 6'6", I would have been like a power forward or even a three guard, and so um, I was always playing center when I first started. And so you're not learning, like mad dribbling skills like you see these guys have today, and
Yeah.
so I think what kind of hurt me in basketball was that I was always playing as a center. They call it with your back turned to the basket, right?
Hmm.
My daughter plays on a D1 school right now, at the Naval Academy, and she's incredible. But she's got incredible handles. She can kill it from the three. She can kill it underneath. She's ambidextrous on layups and swatting stuff. But a lot of that had to do with when my daughter said she wanted to play basketball. I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do now, right? you know. And so I ended up going playing football. I was born into pro wrestling as a livelihood, as the Watts family. It fed me as a child, and it fed my children, right? So it's in my
Yep.
DNA. It I so appreciate it, but I'm telling you right now, like, um, wrestling was the livelihood, meaning pro wrestling, right? As your parents whatever jobs they have, right? It makes it part of your upbringing, your makeup, right? And so
Yeah.
I wanted, I was very interested in pro wrestling, but I was also raised as an entrepreneur and a free thinker and free speech and all these things, man. And so it was kind of crazy because my daughter and son asked me, they're like, my daughter's hardly ever in town because she plays for the Naval Academy. She's in cybersecurity. But my son, he's graduated college and he's got his own thing going on here in Atlanta. So when she came in, she goes, "Hey, Dad, can we go watch this movie called The Claw?" And about the Von Erichs. And what was
Yeah.
crazy is I hadn't even heard The Claw was coming out, and then I saw the reviews, and so like my daughter was coming in right when it was coming out, so it was kind of crazy. It was me, my girlfriend, my son, his girlfriend, and my daughter, and we're watching The Claw, and it was kind of crazy because it is a movie about a family and we were very close. And so I was saying stuff like, "Oh my gosh, they didn't even show the one brother's death in this and da da da," and not a bad thing. Just I was watching this movie, understanding that a lot of this, like Kerry Von Erich used to come to the house and work with my brother on javelin and discus throw and shot put throw, right? And when each kid died back then, there wasn't internet, there wasn't cell phones, so my dad would sit us down as a family and go, "I have horrible news. Fritz von Erich called, and David died when he was over in Japan," and we're like, "Oh my gosh," I mean. And so now we're watching on the big screen. So believe it or not, a lot of it happened is as children. My mother and father had basically agreed that we would know and understand the business as a business,
Yeah.
appreciate, respect the sport and the athletes, but she did not want any of her kids in the ring, practicing, working out in the ring, minus a college scholarship.
Yeah.
Um, she got to see the world of wrestling, and she basically said that, okay, so what happens if you get hurt or you don't want to pro wrestle? What are you going to drop back on? What is your goal? What is your skills in the world of everything else, right? Do you have management skills? Do you have accounting skills? I mean, what are your skills? So heeding that promise, I went to college, man, and I wanted to be the Heisman Trophy winner. I wanted to win the national championship. I wanted to set records, and I always loved and appreciated wrestling. And man, we set up the rings, turned on lights, music, sold T-shirts, uh, everything. I mean, anything you can think behind the scenes. A lot of times in my dad's federation, they have double shots on Sunday, like every 3 weeks, and it would be
Yeah.
Oklahoma City in the morning, and then Tulsa at night. And literally, a lot of times we were setting up a ring in Oklahoma City really early, and then coming back an hour and a half to Tulsa to set up a ring, to go back to take down the ring, to get back, and then and if the show ran long in Oklahoma City, sometimes we had to switch to drive one of the athletes, back to Tulsa or whatever. And then a lot of times, after everyone's gone and everything's settled, a lot of times we were breaking down a ring and going and putting it in storage and getting home at 1 o'clock in the morning to go right back and do, to study. So we knew all that. We had appreciation for all of that. But it wasn't until um, uh, after my college, Tampa Bay was looking at me, and Cincinnati Bengals were looking at me. But I was kind of burnt out on football, and I had actually called up my father and said, "Hey, do you know anyone near Louisville, Kentucky, or anything that I could get in the ring? I actually want to feel what it's like to be in the ring." He goes, "Yeah, I know this guy named Jody Hamilton, Massive Assassin. It's down there
Okay.
near Atlanta. you want to go get in the ring and bounce around, man, do it. And because I had 3 classes left to finish my master's business administration. So I'm like, cool, I'll drop down there. And so I dropped down there, and literally 23, 21, 23 days later, I was driving back to Louisville, and Dusty Rhodes had asked me to do a match. I'm like, Dusty, I, I bought wrestling boots in order to just feel what pro wrestling boots were like, but I don't have a
Yeah.
wrestling outfit. I don't have anything. And he's like, well, you got your leather jacket? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you got any football pants hanging around? Yeah. He was cut them off or whatever. He didn't care what I wore. And or no, maybe I had trunks. Maybe I had trunks because I wanted to get trunks just to go down there and work out. But anyway, so I end up doing a match, and crazy story. And then when I was done, a guy named Grizzly Smith said, "Hey, Dusty wants you to call him." And so I called Dream, and he said, "Hey, kid, your school doesn't start till Monday." That was a Friday. And I said, "Okay." And and he said, "Hey, man, on the down the road about 2 hours tomorrow night, man. I think it was like Chattanooga or something." And he said, why don't you hit Chattanooga and wrestle?" I said, "Are you kidding me?" And he's like, "No, hit another match." I'm like,
Yeah.
heck yeah, did it. Same thing happened. Drew's like, "Hey, call Dusty." I think the first one was like in Franklin, Tennessee, and then I don't know if Chattanooga, but then it was like the next time. So I get the call, "Hey, why don't you run it back again?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, man!" And I think it was like Nashville, and which Nashville is not far from Louisville. It's in between, and I ran it back again, and afterwards he said, "Hey, Dusty wants to talk to you." Go, "How was it?" I said, "Dude," I said, "I have been in some of the biggest arenas and stadiums. We played it's called the Coca-Cola Classic a long time ago. We played the University of Syracuse in a sold out Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. We beat the University of Alabama in the Tempe Fiesta Bowl, on national TV. I mean, my first start was on ESPN against Ohio State in the Horseshoe, sold out, right? So I have been on some big stages, and I have felt a lot of adrenaline. And I said, "Dusty, I've never felt anything like that." And he goes, "Son, that only says one thing." He said, "You'll never get that feeling ever again if you don't pro wrestle." I said, "Well, sir, hopefully you'll think about me when I'm gonna go finish my degree. I got 1 semester. I'm gonna get my master's." I said, maybe I said, I'll get a job maybe in Atlanta for Georgia Pacific or something, and maybe I could work out, and you can tell whether you want me. And Dream's like, "No, no. What you don't understand is you're not going back to college. I need you back in Atlanta. We tape Saturday night wrestling on Monday at Center Stage. Your next match is going to be on TV." I'm like, "What?" And so it went very fast. Nothing was planned. I didn't go, "Hey, I'm going to go to Atlanta and I'm going to become a pro wrestler." And I wasn't, that's not how that was not that's not how it developed, right? I had a
Yeah.
love for it, but I think it was more that I was focused on the honor and respect of my parents and the promise I made my mother. Now that was my mom doing that. My dad would have had us kids just like Dusty had his, and the Von Erichs and the Ganyas and the Grahams and the Hearts, and I could keep on going down, buddy. There's been a lot of kids that have.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of kids that have been referees at 15 years old, your age, as
Mhm.
referees or something, But no, I respected it and I understood what the vision was. And then the next thing man, I'm all over the place, all over the world, and on a wild ride and loving it.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. What does being a second generation wrestler to a WWE Hall of Famer feel like to you, and how do you think that affected your career as a wrestler?
I will say I appreciate your question. And so let me answer that question as Erik Watts, because I can't speak for Dustin, and I can't, and Bret Hart and Owen and Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake, and I can't answer what it was like for them because I watched a lot of those guys, and I believe each one of us had a different. We all had an appreciation, but we all had a different goal and drive. Um, my appreciation is I was raised in the house of one of the greatest business people, business minds. My mom and dad. She had some businesses, sold them, and did well. Um, and not my words, but Jerry Jarrett's words, Vince McMahon's words. I could go down the line. As he was probably one of the best promoters of all times, and it just so happens he was a legend in the ring. So me coming to wrestle, my perspective was an appreciation for all the generations before me, and the blood, sweat, and tears of what helped build pro wrestling to when I got there. Because I tell you what, by the time I got into pro wrestling, man, we're wrestling in front of millions of people on TV, right? It's not territorial
Yeah.
anymore. It's not in small towns. It's not in small arenas. It's not at your local bingo hall or at your or at your high school basketball court or something like that. We're, we're
Hmm.
we're we're hitting the big time, sold out arenas, football stadiums, things like that. But I I got to see it because in the locker room there were a lot of athletes that had a lot of different perspectives, and I will say there is a lot that had appreciation for it, and there was a lot of them that didn't have appreciation for it, and the majority of people, and rightfully so, saw wrestling as I am a superstar, I'm an entertainer, I am the show. And listen, you see that in football, you see it in basketball, you see that at your local Wendy's. There's some
Yeah.
people that think I'm the greatest hamburger maker ever. You guys just don't get it, right? And it's all about
Yep.
how much am I getting paid hourly, man? And literally in pro wrestling, that that happened a lot. I should be getting paid more. It's all about that. Where I was looking at it, I understood that as an athlete, and I understood that as a business person myself, and I was wanting to be successful both in the ring and financially. But I also understood what it was for the wrestling company to have to keep the lights on, and we needed fans in the seats, we needed viewers, and I
Yep.
got to be honest with you, some athletes, period, yeah, you all want to be in front of a sold out crowd, but realistically, even if I'm not in a sold out crowd and I'm getting paid big money, hey, I'm going home and I'm looking at my bank account, right? And so I am not judging anyone, but I'm saying as a second generation wrestler whose father owned a federation and was a pro wrestler, I might looked at it different than Ric Flair's son or Dusty Rhodes' son or whoever else's son, that their fathers were famous pro wrestlers and great bookers, but maybe didn't own a federation. What I'm saying? So it was just
Yeah.
so it, so I can only answer it as Erik Watts. And I was never, and I saw this every once in a while, man. Guys are like, I can never be my father. I can never, how am I ever going to be that famous? And I would just like, well, first of all, you can't. And they were like, what? Like they thought I was re-securing their insecurity. I'm like, no, no one can ever be Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan. No one can be Elvis Presley, but Elvis Presley. No one can be that. Now, what you can do is blaze your own trail and you can make your own name. But if you're getting caught up in your head about, I got to live in my daddy's footsteps, bro, I didn't come to live in my daddy's footsteps. I came to step over his footstep and make a bigger footstep. That's just the way I was raised mentally, in business, in pro wrestling, in motivational speaking. Man, I got to bring my own message. I'm no good at trying to be someone else. I got to be the best me, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I tell my kids. I mean, don't you worry about what other people think. Worry about what you think about you, and worry about how your life is going. And if you're positive, and you're uplifting, and you're grinding and you're working, popularity and success and wealth and all that comes, that happens automatically. It just happiness comes, you know. But if you're waking up every day, oh man, I'm not anything, or I got passed over for a job, or if the best you can do is, then you know, did you say you did a play, or were you working on a play today, like acting or some kind of something at school?
Yes, I rehearsing for a play. Yep.
So you're rehearsing for a play, right? And let me tell you what, if you're rehearsing, if you're taking the time to say, I should have had the lead role, or I should have had this role, or I'm a better actor, or whatever the thing is, if you're paying attention to that in your life, then you are not doing acting, or you're not doing it a justice. You are missing what life's about, if that's what you were doing per se. You see what I'm saying? So
Yep.
so that was my perspective. So I hated it for people that wanted to hold something against me that never met me. Um, I didn't look for anyone to lift me up and help me out that knew I was Bill Watts' son either. And the great thing for me, man, is there was quite a few guys that were at WCW that knew me when I was 12, 13, 10, 14. You know, bro, it was second or third grade. I can't remember. I took Andre the Giant to show and tell. He was my show and tell. Andre the Giant was. So, and my dad sent me to go get Andre the Giant when they were bringing back Legends of Wrestling in Atlanta, Georgia, and to pick him up at the hotel and bring him to the arena, bro. So, you know, Sting had known me since I was a kid. Rick Steiner knew me since way back. Bobby Eaton. I can keep on going down. Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes. Those guys knew me. So they also knew that my dad was a tough guy and a hard man. And so they knew that my upbringing was not an easy upbringing. So I thank goodness I had a respect from them, because they saw my work. They, meaning as a kid at the stadiums and doing the yes sir, and how you doing, and every time the guy, sir, how you doing, they understood that. Now the guys that didn't know me, they judged me separately. But what saddens me sometimes is I love the people that want to judge just other people, and they want to talk about them like they know them, and they know where they've been, and all they really want to do is just talk about people, right? So I had a
Mhm.
lot of that in pro wrestling, and I felt worse for the people that took their time to think negative about me or say something about me that never met me. But I get a lot of podcasters asking me, like, man, what was it like, when there was, certain people that just hated you and didn't know you? I go, well, how is that? And how do you feel like that in life anyway? How does it make you personally feel if someone's talking crap about you and they've never even met you? You know,
Yeah.
like I think it's a waste of time. I don't even have the time to be mad. I find that it's called, to me, that's called ignorance, and to me, it's hard to get upset about ignorant people, man.
Yep. When you watched wrestling as a kid, who was your favorite wrestler in growing up? And then who is your favorite wrestler now?
Growing up, my favorite wrestler is Cowboy Bill Watts. He wasn't the easiest father, but when he went in the ring and his interviews and telling the story, it was real life. And as a kid, setting up rings and selling concessions, to see how my dad emotionally affected the fans. And I'd be in towns where people didn't know who I was, and to hear them talking about, oh my gosh, the one thing about Bill Watts is he takes care of things, man. They might have cheated and got him, but ooh, I wouldn't want to be them when he comes back, And I can tell you, I hear people going, I come to watch pro wrestling because, man, I watch Bill Watts do to people like I'd like to do to my boss when my boss treats me bad. and so and so that was cool. And don't hey listen, I saw the greatest of the great. I mean, the Flairs and the Dusty Rhodes and the man, I got to see them all, right? But on
Yeah.
a day in, a day out, I just thought Bill Watts, father or not, he was my favorite pro wrestler. Now, I also was a kind of my tastes were different, right? I don't know how to say this. I'm in Oklahoma, man, but I liked being a little bit different too. So it was really cool, when Sting and Ultimate Warrior come there, and Sting's got the spiked hair and they're painting their faces, and I love the Road Warriors when they came, and I loved as a kid, you know, watching this guy's son named Jake the Snake Roberts develop and come up with the DDT, and he talked to me about it, man, right? And why he
Yep.
thought and he was a guy, he didn't have the best body, right? He had skinny legs and not an upper body, and he didn't claim that he liked to go to the gym or wanted to go to the gym. But what he did is he came to a tough territory where there was mainly athletes and tough guys. And this is what I love so much about Jake then and today. He was so mentally deep. Like his interviews were like Shakespeare. Like this guy could mentally just and verbally communicate things to make you scared of him or make you
Yeah.
cheer. And that to me is true art. So I'm just trying to put it in a nutshell. I can talk about all kinds of guys that have blown my mind, and they'll continue to blow my mind. Having a favorite, man, if you ask me who my favorite rock band is, or country artist is, or jazz, I wouldn't give you one. I don't have one, but man, I've got a lot that I really appreciate, all in a special way. So sorry about the answer, but it just is what it is. I don't have a favorite. I have some that I just really enjoy watching, and I can respect their talents and their art.
Yeah, of course. Who were your wrestling trainers to help you get into the business?
A great question. Well, the first guy, it just so happened, was the masked assassin, Jody Hamilton, because he allowed me to come down to his gym and work out. And he had this dude, man. I called him kind of the Chuckinator. He was like Chucky and the Terminator, and he was just a ball of muscle, and he was swollen, and he was so mad all the time. He was beat red, and I'm teasing, but I mean, dude was like 5'4". He was 5'4" tall, 5'4" shoulders, right? And he was on a mission. And it seemed like he was mad all the time. And so to this day, anyone that worked out with Sarge, Buddy Lee Parker,
Oh yeah.
you're right, he worked with me. And a matter of fact, my first match, right, was with Buddy Lee. So Buddy Lee, my
Oh
first
wow.
23 days, my first 23 days was with him. That's really all I knew. There wasn't any big famous names coming down at the school down there. It wasn't the power plant. It became the power plant, right? But the one thing that I learned early from my mother and father was always have mentors and never, ever, ever be afraid to go ask someone for help. So I will tell you this. I asked anyone and everyone for input. But it was so awesome. Like, when Harley raced, hey Harley, we're going to do a tour out there in Kansas and Missouri. Hey, I know that's near your home. You're going to stay at your home one night. Yeah. Hey Harley, is there any way I could talk you into showing up early at one of the arenas and work out with me? Yeah, kid. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Yeah, kid. Dick Murdoch. Yeah, kid. Dusty Rhodes. Yeah, kid. Sting. Hey, Sting, would you watch my match and could you critique me? Well, I think people that I think people would go, who are you to ask Sting? Well, shoot, I don't know. I mean, he could say no. What? Why wouldn't I ask him? Um, I'll tell you someone that like my first years or 2 years and as a worker in the ring, I really think he was one of the best. Scotty Flamingo or a guy called
Yeah.
Raven, right? And we'd go over my match and over my match. A guy named Steve Williams, Stone Cold Steve Williams, Stone Cold Steve Austin. But he was part of the Hollywood Blondes, and Brian
Yeah.
Pillman and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Like, oh my God, and a guy named Hiro Matsuda that taught so many people. And he came to some shows and worked with me. Me being blessed enough to have Chono come from Japan and work a week to 2 weeks on the road with me, and even gave me, my first finish, the STF. That's what he used over in Japan, right? And for him to work with me here in America with his own finish, right? I mean, I don't want to disrespect, but Rick Rude, Diamond Dallas Page and I, great friends, and we helped each other. We started out pretty much at the same time. So um, I was blessed enough to know some of the best based on them coming through my father's territory. So that was a blessing. But again, the way I was raised, I would ask anyone that I thought was good. And today, I'm a businessman. If I see someone rocking a business, I'll say, hey, man, tell me what makes your business so successful. If I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, man. Like my mom and my dad put in me, like the only way for you to be the best is to get a whole bunch of diamonds or gold pieces from other people, and then when you start meshing that together, that's when you become a giant yourself. You're not going to become a giant in life per se by just sitting there. I'm the best. I'm the best. You better learn. You better never stop learning, and you better never get in the way. Don't let your ego get in the way of who you are. And the key to that is no matter how and what you do, you got to have something that grounds you, and you got to have you got to be humble, right? That doesn't mean
Yep.
you're going to be the best person. That doesn't mean you're not going to mess up. But if you don't have a humility for life and understanding of life, that it's so precious, and at any time you can be gone, or your health, or an injury, or a car wreck, or anything that can happen to you, if you don't take every day as a blessing, man, you're missing out, I believe, right? So
Yeah.
so I don't know if you see, but the questions that you'll ask me, they'll always gravitate to kind of the way I was raised, and I continue to apply those things.
Yeah. What is who has been the stiffest wrestler you have gone in the ring with so far in your career?
Oof, man, there were stiff ones. Um, wow. I oh man, I there's a lot of them, right? There's a lot of them, and it depended on the situation, and they're not, like, there was a lot of stiff ones you probably would never know, right? Japan's a very stiff style over there, right?
Yep.
In Germany, there was a lot of stiff people. Then there were some people that were just brutally tough. The Vader. Vader was in there.
Yep.
Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit uh, could be the lightest in the world, but the moves and the actions that needed to be stiff, he did it on purpose for the respect of the sport. So a lot of your chain wrestlers and a lot of your grapplers, um, um, a lot of those guys were stiff in nature. Like everyone talks about how stiff my dad was, right? But
Yeah.
but there is a fine line between being stiff and snug and just being a jerk, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's some
Yep.
people that their
Definitely.
adrenaline or they just took advantage of people because if people don't know it, I mean, we do know what's going on out there, and
Yep.
so if I'm gonna give up my body for you to clothesline me, let's make it look like I took my head off. And I on a clothesline, I got to be honest. The harder you hit me across the chest, the better the clothesline and the harder I could hit the ring. And if you're putting a clothesline around someone and you do it properly, you're not hurting anyone. You get them in the throat, you hit them in the face, catch them in the ear, not look and hit them in the mouth. Like a lot of people, Stan Hansen, the lariat,
Yeah.
Bradshaw. His mentor was Stan Hansen, right, with the lariat, and people would go, "Oh my God, Bradshaw! I mean, he's so stiff." Yeah, well, yeah, he set it in. He was raised to set it in. The guys that came from Matsuda's camp and the Heart, like the Lion's Den, or from my father, they were taught to be stiff because though that generation, wrestling was not entertainment. Wrestling was real,
Yeah.
and they wanted every person that came to the show for it to be real. And I mean, and dude, as a kid, your age, I saw some stuff. Like I'd have little kids, no kids my age, right? And I'm just
Yep.
sitting there putting chairs up or whatever, and the one kid would go, "I told you it's real. I was told you it's real," and the other kid would go, "No, I'm telling you, my parents said this is fake. It's fake." And the one kid wanted to prove it was fake to the kid that was real, and literally, I watched the kid come up and go, "The blood's ketchup, dude. That's not blood." And I watched the kid that said it was fake dip his fingers in blood, stick it in his mouth, and it looked like he wanted to throw up, and he goes, "Yeah, ketchup." I'm like, you just licked Buzz Sawyer's blood, bro. Like that was Sting's blood. But the kid, the kid had believed it. But I'm gonna tell you too, the people that believed it was real, right? And so it depended on. I came from a generation of it needs to be snug in order to respect the business. Then as I was going, you saw the Miz, and the Miz, he's like, this is a business. I want to make money. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm going to make this more cartoonish. Well, you know what? Listen, I got to be honest with you. I don't think the kid's gotten hurt, right? And so you look from a
Yeah.
business standpoint, the way I was raised, the the way I was raised, is it disrespectful to that generation? To that generation, it's disrespectful, right? But as a business, that's where the business is going. That's where the business is going. There, back in the day, there were more people that wrestled like a Brock Lesnar, or I'm gonna tell you, Chris Jericho. He can be light, but he can be snug as he wants, right?
Yep.
Um, uh, uh, Triple H, right? He doesn't wrestle anymore, but you
Yep.
know what? Even the fans think that he could get in the ring right now and take on anyone for the world belt. But his style is not light at all because Hunter, one of the guys that he rode on the road with when I first met him, he was John Paul Levesque, and
Yep.
he rode the road with Killer Kowalski. And and I went, up and spent some time, a few days up at Quick Killer's school while we were wrestling around the area just to see him. And Killer Kowalski was trained just like my dad was trained, stiff as can be. And so what sets you apart? Like Shawn Michaels could be stiff as heck, but he could put on that show. Bret Hart, Bret Hart, he hit his when he hit the turnbuckle, and his dad was this way. It, the ring would move, and it sounded like he was snapping the metal when he hit it. And brother, I was 6'6", 290,
Yeah.
and after I heard it, I would hear it like he's like Erik, and he was. I asked him one day. I said, "Hey, would you come down? Can we get in the ring some?" He's like, "Sure." And when I saw him hit the turnbuckles, I said, "I want to learn that." My whole experience, buddy, I don't know what it was, but he could lower his hips, and he said the way I trained, man, is they should hear me hitting the turnbuckle in the rafters. Who's gonna say that's fake? I'm like, you're
Yep.
right. Yeah, like you're right. So stiff and snug, I enjoyed because that's what I grew around. Um, Out of control, not so good. Not so good. Like again, I enjoyed Vader. I enjoyed him, but Vader was known for a guy that was stiff. But there's a lot of times he was dangerous.
Yep.
Dangerous stuff. Like I I the kid that when he broke that kid's neck at WCW, that was at a TV taping. And literally I was the match after him. I watched them take down the ropes, put the kid on a gurney, take him out, put the ropes up, and then I had my match. And they went on like nothing happened. And there was a lot of guys in the back saying, we love him, but he's so physical, he gets his adrenaline going that he's unsafe,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yep.
so and that's not God bless him. He's always good to me and a great guy. Um, uh, but you want to talk about people like fearing getting in the ring with him? There was a lot of guys, but then you talk like Sting and him wrestled so many times that I'm like, Sting, how do you do it? And he's like, when the big man starts coming, I put my arms up as hard as I can, and it looks like he's knocking my head off. And yes, I'm hitting myself, but he goes, I'm like pushing away from him, and he's so strong that he's hitting me, and it's not hurting him, and I'm just protecting myself. And he said, so when I was going left and right, literally he was hitting me so hard that it was tossing my body left and right. And Sting is a big dude.
Yeah.
Sting is a strong dude. So he knew, but he was so good, and is so good. He knew how to protect himself. Like he could work with anyone, and that's the true
Yep.
thing. Back in the day, there was a saying, when someone thought you were the top of the game, they'd say that dude could have a match with a broomstick.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I heard that a lot from the other guys that I've interviewed too, that Vader was definitely dangerous in the ring
There you
from
go.
their experience.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So I just wanted to make sure, like I think the translation sometimes stiff means are they out of control, and snug they're in control but they just lay it in. And so I just wanted to make sure, the translation to me stiff and snug was the same thing, because there are things that you should be stiff on, like I was raised that if I'm going to hit someone in the back with a steel chair, I'm bringing it. I'm going to
yeah.
bring it. I've had more people pull chairs on me, and then I get hit in the head or in the elbow, and it hurts so damn bad. Now listen, that chair hurts like a beast. Like it hurts. But when you know it's coming, and you got and you're gonna take it, and it hurts, that's fine. If it injures you, that's not cool. You know,
Yep.
that's not cool, man. So
Have you ever wrestled or done anything in Wisconsin before?
Yes, I have. I was somewhere for dinner the other day, and someone recognized me, and then they were from Minnesota, right? And they're like,
Oh
"Hey,
yeah,
name all the places that you wrestled in Minnesota." I said, "I can't." I mean, like, there's no way. There's just no way. And Wisconsin, realistically, there's pretty much not a state I did not wrestle in, or and 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 not that everyone made all the big territories, but pretty much if you had a run at WWE and you had a run at WCW, and both of them, you hit every state. I mean, Sturgis,
yeah.
North Dakota, right? Um, the only state I think I did not wrestle in, the only states I did not wrestle in, I never wrestled in Hawaii. But as a young kid, I went to Hawaii for a major wrestling event after the promoter there passed away. My father, out of respect, went and he brought some of his wrestlers, and there was a lot of wrestlers because they had a wrestling event for there. And I've never wrestled in Alaska. I've only stopped through there on the way to Japan, you know, Anchorage. Um, but man, other than that, I would be hard pressed to say I haven't wrestled in every state. So, well, um, what brings up Wisconsin with you, other than being a cheesehead?
Because
Are you a cheesehead?
yeah, I live in Wisconsin, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
that's a question I ask everybody because I just like knowing if they've wrestled in Wisconsin and been here before.
Well, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, no, 1,000%. A 1,000%. Green Bay, and all yeah. There's been several. Um, plus, you know, it just made sense because like in WWE for a long time, it was 3 days on, 10 days off, 7 days on, 3 days off, right? And so
Yeah,
when you got up near certain states, right, you're gonna hit Baltimore and Philly and Boston and New York City. Well, when you get over here, right, you're gonna hit St. Paul and you're gonna hit Milwaukee. Right. You're already right. You're gonna hit Milwaukee and Baltimore. I mean, so geographically it makes sense. They When I was at WCW, you had to drive any. You're supposed to drive the towns if they weren't more than 250 or 300 miles apart. So anything under, I think at WCW was anything under 300 you drove, and anything over you flew. And then WWE, I think it was 250. But realistically, thinking, right? Remember, there's got to be rings,
yep,
and everything's not TV, right? We may have a one-off where we're in Milwaukee or Green Bay, and we fly in for a pay-per-view or a TV, and then we're right back out to the West Coast to hit, San Francisco, LA, Sacramento, boomity boomity boomity, and hit that. Just as what I used to dislike the most is doing a California run and your last night being, in LA, and then Vince would run Monday Night Raw in flipping Madison Square Garden.
yeah.
Well, if you take the red eye out of LA, and it's 4 hour difference, and it's five hour 6 hour flipping flight. You do the math, and on TV days, you had to be at the building at 1 o'clock. So pretty
Oh
much
wow.
you're landing to check into a hotel to go to the show. When I tell you jet lag and people groggy, I mean, by the time the show started at 7 o'clock, you'd just be waking. I mean, you were just running on fumes, man. Running on fumes. But
Yeah. What do you consider to be your weakness and strengths in wrestling?
I think that I think a weakness of mine was that I didn't get to have consistent years of wrestling over 250 or 300 matches a year. I think that there's two major injuries I had that took time to heal. So that was one. Um, WWE was another one. Here's Tekno Team 2000, and we're rocking and rolling, and then all of a sudden they get disenchanted with Chad Fortune and want to get rid of Chad, and so they gave him a chance by us going to Memphis for a little while, but he just wasn't. We played football together, and and he was one of my best friends at college. Um, and it was my influence that he asked if I could give him a tryout, but and I did, but he just mentally was not equipped for the locker room and that part of wrestling. So then once they let him go, now they got to put me back on the shelf because they just fired my tag partner. And so,
Yep.
Vince was like, okay, are you going to come back as Troy Techno without no Techno Team 2000? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Right. And
Yep.
so, so those pauses, um, I felt were some of my weaknesses. However, some of my strengths were I didn't have a problem, asking Vince for my release. And I was blessed that he let me have my release because they did offer me and they did want to remake me. And I didn't want, and no disrespect, I didn't want to sit home for 6, 8, 9 months because at WWE, a lot of people don't know what goes into and the amount of money they have to spend on every person because, they got to trade, they got to come up with a name. They got to trademark the name. They come up with an
Yep.
outfit. Um, Entrance music, blah blah. I mean, the money they spend per character is enormous amounts of money, and with that, it takes time. Especially when I was wrestling, it would take time to make the music and do this and make the outfits and oh my god, I mean, it takes forever. And to me, I was wanting to be just like I was in football. I was shooting to be the greatest wrestler ever, if possible, not for myself, but for the sport and fans. I mean, why? I didn't do it for ego. I wanted, Hulk Hogan, great. He is awesome. So I
Yeah.
want to be better. I want to be better than that, right? Like, I mean,
Yep.
like you being in Wisconsin, you've seen some people and or you've at least heard or seen some people that have wanted to be better than the next person. I mean, there was a guy named Brett Favre, right?
Yep.
Right? And Brett Favre
Yep.
was like the greatest, right? And then this Aaron Rodgers person thought he was better than Brett. And then right there, Green Bay decides, hey, we got this young stud, and so we're gonna get rid of Brett, and the whole Wisconsin and everywhere went ape crazy and was mad, and then Aaron comes in, and Aaron's a Hall of Famer, right? So if everyone just bowed down to Brett, which I think Brett was awesome, and I think Aaron is awesome, and blah blah blah. What I'm trying to say is, your true athletes and your true entertainers understand and respect the legends, but how do you become a legend? you gotta put it. So I think one of my strengths was to never stop. I was never in a position to say, oh my gosh, I want to collect a check. I was trying to learn the Shakespeare of wrestling. And that the old school people say, when you learn how to control the crowd by your actions and reactions, you have learned the Shakespeare of pro wrestling. So I was trying to learn it. You know this. You just don't step up and learn method acting. Or you don't just no. It doesn't. I don't care who you are. If you're a diver, you just don't come up and do a perfect double pike or gainer off the board. It takes practice and practice and practice and failing and up this. So so I think the strength of mine was I wanted to go to Japan. I wanted to go to Germany. I wanted to go to these places. I knew I wasn't going to stay at ECW long. I let Paulie know that. But I wanted to go in and I wanted to see the locker room and the people and see their way. I wasn't into all the extreme wrestling and all this other stuff, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so I was always interested in learning a different territory or a different art. You know, it was like Brad Armstrong. I used to ask him, I'm like, hey man, you know, let's do a luchador style. Well, that everything in America is to the left arm, right? And in Mexico is to the right. Well, I don't care who you are. If all you've done is learn how to come off the ropes and throw someone this way and the other, and you turn your feet the opposite direction, it's kind of crazy, right? But but
Yeah.
so to me, I wanted to learn just the offhanded skill. In Germany, a lot of people don't know this. At Catch, Germany, they wrestled rounds, and it was a scoring, and they would have these tournaments, and your win and loss meant something, and that ring was so flipping hard, and if you did something wrong, they used yellow cards and red cards like in soccer. And if you got a red card, if someone didn't come pay your fine, you're disqualified. So it gave a whole new process of why you would do something dirty and not dirty, and
Yeah.
and were you confident enough that you could get a card pulled on you and the fan pay it? Because the cool thing about it is, if you got good enough there to tell that story, the referee and the wrestlers split the money from the fines. So that's kind of how you got bonused out there, you know. But if you messed up and you did something and no one paid your fine, well, you just killed that match. You know,
Yep.
mind boggling. Before I went, mind boggling, right? I'm like, I did not know this. I'd never seen catch wrestling, right? So I think the strength of that comes from, you know, my mom being, you know, from Estonia and coming over and having to live in deportation camps before her family was sponsored 7 years. They were there before they were sponsored because they wanted to, you know, Estonia was a free country, and Russia took it over, and her mother wanted the freedom of religion and voice, and so they escaped, and I think it was my mom. You know, my mom spoke 11 languages. I think that it was also being raised with a person that had a international look at things, and that anything could be achieved, and America was the land of hope and freedom and awesomeness, right? And
Yep.
and and so a lot of times what happens, we're those that are raised in America sometimes take for granted just how awesome America is, and yet it's just like anyone else. You can become cocky and arrogant, you know, accidentally,
Yeah.
right? And we're so
Yep.
blessed as a country. So that's kind of going back to what I'm saying is, I think my strength was always looking to learn something to better and give me more tools in my toolbox. I did not want to be one dimensional. And that is one thing I'll say about wrestling today that is very tough, is most all these wrestlers, the new ones, are going to the school, right? In
Yep.
Orlando, and and they see each other do the same moves, and they're all trying to learn their finish, and and to me, it's going to be very difficult if WWE takes over too many other territories, because it's very hard for people to learn a different psychology or a different method acting, or anything else if everything is shot through the same school. You know,
Yep.
that's why you'll hear about, oh my God, this guy from Japan, you know, WWE, if they get him, or this guy from Mexico, or this guy from whatever. Well, one of the greatest and most refreshing things is they have a different way of wrestling, so they look
Hmm.
different. You know, a lot of times, you watch these matches, and realistically, the only difference is size, color, gender, acrobatics, right? You
Yep.
know, and And that is true whether you're a pro wrestler or not. What I want to see is who sets your mind on fire, you know, and you get so involved in what is going on in the ring that you forget whether it's real or fake. That's what Raven one time, he said, Eric, he goes, this is what I think the perfect match is. Any match in which you can go into an audience where everyone knows it's entertainment and you make them lose themselves for a minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, to where they get so on their seat, they cheer, they think the match is over. Oh my God, they think you're hurt. They know you're hurt. When you make them lose themselves to the point for a second, for that match or for that a period, that's when you have had an incredible match. Because I've
Yep.
seen it. I have been in the ring where people come just to heckle, or it's the boyfriend that's girlfriend likes wrestling and they don't want to like it, or it's the girlfriend that doesn't want to like wrestling because the boyfriend likes it. It's a guy thing, or it's a girl thing, or you're just here because you like the hot guys, you like the hot girls, and they don't want to be there, but they're going to be there for their partner, right? And then all of a
Yep.
sudden they get caught up in a match to where they're jumping up and they're getting excited, and then after the match they look around like, did anyone see me? Did anyone see me? They lost their own
Yeah.
emotion because of that. That to me, man, that is true Shakespeare, and that's true fun. And I tell people all this all the time, and some guys don't like it. I am a business person. I am a wrestler, and I'm a mark. And meaning a rabid fan.
Yep.
If I watch wrestling, I want to lose myself in that match, and I want to be entertained. Right? I don't.
Yep.
How many times have you bought a movie ticket because the lineup looks awesome and the story sucked? And you go, I just wasted my money, right? And
Yep.
how many times have you picked a Netflix or an Amazon Prime movie and checked it out, and you never even heard of an actor, and you go, oh my gosh, that movie was rocked. That's how I look at pro wrestling. I know that certain guys have a better chance of pulling things off, but I have been in matches. One of the most crazy matches, it was at TNA, and Raven came up with this crazy match called Clockwork Orange House of Fun match. And it was a 6-man, right? It was a 6-man tag match. Well, it was supposed to be a tag match, but there was a little tagging to it. And they put poles up on each of the corners and put a chain connecting the top of the poles. And they hung chairs and mailboxes and kendo sticks and baking pans and everything. And whatever you could get to and pull off, you could use on your opponent. Crutches, everything. And literally it was me, Raven, and Sandman. Okay.
Oh wow.
Right. Versus a guy, Northcutt. Now, Kevin Northcutt was a very, very good wrestler, but he'd never made it big. So it's not like people would go, oh, Kevin Northcutt, of course, right? They just wouldn't.
Yep.
They had this other kid, red shirt security, and the kid was big as a house and big arms. I think he was like 6'8", 310 pounds and in good shape, right? But green. And the reason they call him red shirt security is that he really hadn't been good in the ring yet. So they brought him out as muscle behind someone else, right? As like their security, right? And then
Yep.
the kid from Canada, oh my God, he was so good. But not like overly known to the audience, but known by the wrestlers as a good wrestler. But still, I'm like, hold on just a second. We are coming together. You threw this match together. It's a crazy match. None of us have been like, yes, me and Raven know each other, and yes, me and Raven and Sandman and Raven know each other. But realistically, this is not what you would say. Uh, I do not have a good term for it. As soon as we got told what the match was, I go, this thing is going to be a laugh fest. This is going to be literally one of the worst matches in history. And the saddest thing about it is I'm going to be a part of it. At basically, I thought it was going to be exactly what I've told you before. When you got some good names, Raven, Sandman, blah blah blah, and then you go and you watch the movie and you go, oh, right? That's what I thought.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you this right now. It was like a 10 or 12-minute match. And I think that year on the internet, it said best six-man match, best bloodiest match. I mean, like it got all these amazing remarks. And somehow, everything worked perfect. Like all three of the baby faces were on top. Then the tide turned to all three of the heels, but we really didn't go over much, right? It wasn't like
Yeah.
we'd been on the road. At TNA, we wrestled one time a week together, one time on pay per
Yep.
view. So it wasn't like we went out and we had this connection, dude. To this day, people will pull that match up and I'll start watching it, and I tell them the inside, you know, about this is what happened. This Goldilocks, right? She's right. She's
Yep.
been there. Goldilocks came out on this match, right? And if you knew the behind the scenes and what was exactly going on and what was happening, it should have been a horrible match. And bro, it was off the chain, like off the chain. That's the fun stuff, man. That's the fun stuff.
For sure. Yep. Who was your first opponent in front of a crowd, and how did you feel going into that first match?
The first opponent was Buddy Lee, and like I said, I think it was Franklin, Tennessee, and I didn't know I was gonna have the match. Right, Dusty talked to me, and I was going home, and so I'll tell you some funny stuff. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I get the address of the place, and I come in, and none of the guys other than Grizzly Smith, that was the road agent.
Yep.
Buddy Lee Parker knew. Nope, I don't. We weren't even on the card. We weren't even on like the card. And I show up and I go, hey, where dressing? Where's the baby faces at? And they go right over there. I'm talking about they're just now setting up the concession. They're just now popping popcorn. No one's in the building yet. And I walk in the babyface locker room, and there is Rick Steiner, which I've known for a long time. He goes, what are you doing here? I go, I'm wrestling. He goes, who's wrestling? And I go, I'm wrestling. He goes, when did you get into wrestling? And not like Rick always gave crap. He's like, what? And he goes, hey,
Yeah.
let me tell you this. You haven't put in the time to be in this locker room. I go, okay. He goes, you know what? Go dress in the concession stand. And I had so much respect that I knew that he was going to give me crap. So I go to the concession stand. I got to put a towel around me. I'm taking my clothes off. I'm putting my stuff on, my shoes in the concession stand. Me and Buddy Lee don't talk before the match, anything like this. I don't know what my entrance music is. I knew it was the first match. They came and, Nick Patrick said first match. And I literally went to the entrance, walked down. I had put my jersey on, and I had gained like 15, 20 pounds since playing football. And I knew it was kind of tight, but I was so excited. I was so sweating that when I got in the ring, I went to pull my jersey off and it got caught like on my head, almost
Oh,
like a hockey fight. Nick Patrick comes and rips my jersey off. You hear a few people in the audience kind of laugh. I'm embarrassed like all get out. Buddy Lee Parker's already in the ring, and he is a serious dude. And I could see him just look down like, oh my gosh. We have the match. It was kind of old school where Nick told us, hey Eric, you're gonna go over. So basically everything was out there, and I just had to sit there and listen to Sarge and do my thing, man. And so I was so blown away. I won. I couldn't believe it. I actually like roll out of the ring. Nick Patrick comes and raises my hand, and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And people are like, great match, woo, and good job, good job. That now I go walking back, I'm going down the heels section, and someone goes, hey, great match, but you're going to the bad guys. I'm like, what? So I went back, went down the good guys to the babyface side, went back to the concession stand, dried off. The old ladies and old men are looking at me like, what are you doing in the concession stand, kid? And my adrenaline was pumping. Grizzly Smith said, hey, call Dusty. I went and found a payphone, called Dusty, and talked to him, and he invited me to the next match. So, bro, that's how my first match felt. Crazy. It was
wow.
absolutely crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If you could go back in time and wrestle anyone that has passed away, who would that be?
Oh wow. Mm, man, you know, there's people out there that were so Shakespeare's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Lou Thez, yeah, Gorgeous George. There are people that some people might not have ever heard of, and when I say just so incredible in the ring, um, it would just be an honor. But I will say this: there were times when I was in the ring with guys that, as a kid or as a fan, I would always I'd pay to see in 2 seconds, and I got to be in the ring with them. Like
Yeah.
Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Like I was like, what? When whatever it was called, the WCW, I can't remember, Lethal Lottery or whatever, and they're doing the pick, and I get to be Jushin Lager and Sting, and I'm
Oh yeah.
thinking, being Sting in the same ring, that's crazy, right? But there's the Harley races, right? I never got to wrestle Harley race. I never got to wrestle a Bam Bam Gordy. I never got to wrestle a Dick Murdoch. I never got to uh uh yeah, I mean, there's not one. But that goes back to the answer, who would be your favorite today or whatever. I have a hard time saying favorites. So there's just so many legends, and there's so many people that built the path of wrestling today, um, that I would have loved to be in the ring with, just to see what it was like to be in the ring and and either wrestle the legend. A person he's not dead, but a person I'll never wrestle or get to wrestle. I got to watch Cowboy Bill Watts wrestle a lot of times, and I got to see the fans react and not react and all that other stuff. To be in the ring with him. I mean, what would that be like? What would it be like to be with Hulk Hogan? I never got to wrestle Hulk Hogan.
Sorry, something the internet kicked me off.
It's okay. So I was basically saying your list. I mean, there's so many guys. I feel bad about the answer because in my mind there are so many people um, that that were it just meant a lot to me, or people that I got to watch old matches of that I couldn't list them. I got to watch Franz Schumann wrestle, but we never wrestled each other when I was on the tours in Germany. But man, just watching that guy was it was incredible, you know.
Yeah.
And there's there's just too many. There's just too many, man.
Yeah, there
There,
definitely is.
there's just some of those dudes, man. I don't know. Some that and then like I told you, I mean, what would it be like? What would it be like to be with a Gorilla Monsoon, or some of these people that were just so legendary, um, uh, a Bruno San Martino or a Rocco. I mean, I don't know. There's too many lists.
Yeah. Who would you list as your three top favorite opponents in your career?
Um, wow, I would I would not know how to rank them other than my opponents. I got to wrestle a few times when I was early at WCW, and I said, "Hey, when we go to some of these smaller shows, is there any way I could wrestle more like a heel?" And babyface matches back then, no one liked to have a baby babyface match, right? And so they allowed me to have a babyface match, but they let me like be the one that lost control and turn on. And wrestling Brad Armstrong was, uh, like I don't even know what to say. I will say, for me, there were other people that were uh, so good to wrestle with because of their tenacity and intensity, like Stone Cold. Way when he's stunning Steve Austin, or the Hollywood Blondes, and I had a lot of joy also wrestling Flying Brian Pillman, and I really enjoyed, even though we didn't hit it off at the beginning, but at the end we did Rick Rude. So and I can't name three.
I'm super, super sorry about this.
Don't you worry about it.
All right, do you want me to move on to the next question?
Yeah. But I'm starting to get a little bit limited for time now.
Yeah.
No, so ask whatever you want, and let me say this while we're live. I think it's very important. Um, I have done a lot of podcasts. A matter of fact, Ernest Miller. I don't know if you remember Ernest Miller, the cat.
Yep.
He just texted me, can you do my podcast tomorrow? uh, and yes, I'm gonna text him back and tell him I think I got a little bit of time tomorrow because Ernest is such a good guy, right? But I've done a lot of
Yep.
podcasts, and you need to know this and your fans all need to know this, that I have done them to where internet connection means everything. I've even had them where they do Zoom and they do the free version and it cuts off at 30 minutes or something, right? And it just got off.
Yeah.
And I had a guy that I had a good podcast with. Literally, it wasn't StreamYard; it was something else that he was using. And when I tell you, it cut out like 12 times, and it was so irritating. And he kind of like was texting and lost control, and said, "Hey, can we do it again?" He asked me to do it again. I said, change the platform." He did whatever platform he chose. The next time, it was cutting out, and I didn't go back on for any other reason that I just didn't trust. I didn't trust that uh, he knew enough about whatever platforms and plenty of nice guy, good questions. But you haven't been shaken once with this happening. You cannot control the internet at your house. Um, you have the type of personality as a podcaster to want to have people want to be on your podcast. So if you get people on your podcast that don't understand that there can be technical difficulties, man, uh, you do the right thing, say sorry, but realistically, they've got to understand, where you're at, where you're coming from. That's why I put on my Facebook. I'm really really excited about doing this podcast because I believe you're 15 years old,
Yep, correct.
right? And you and me had some conversation, right? Not bad or good. Like, hey, you want me to be on your podcast? Ask you a few questions, and you go, hey, I'm just 15 years old, and I'm like, that's cool. And then we just talked about a few things, back and forth. And I'm like, what tenacity! Like this kid, um, you're humble. You asked, you said why you wanted me on the podcast. It all made sense, and I couldn't be more excited than to be on your podcast, right? And then Goldilocks and a few other people that I've seen, and you've got a list of people, and you're setting the dates, and you've communicated well to change the time, or admit uh, you admit, like, hey, I did the 3,000 instead of the 2,000. Do you know how many people, if they put 3,000 and I said, hey, by the way, it was Tekno Team 2,000, do you know how many people would crumble? Oh, will you ever forgive? No, I don't care. I don't care. What did I say to you? I said, hey, bro, it's your poster, it's your podcast, right?
Yeah.
You could put Techno Team 99 and a half. You know, I don't I don't find it disrespectful because I also understand what you're doing and I appreciate it. And I'm telling the people that are listening to this, as I try to tell on most podcasts, I say this: I am a historian with wrestling. Wrestling, like you've heard me say, paid for every meal I had as a child and paid for my kids' meals, right?
Yeah.
And I am second generation, and I can't tell you, but there are rumors that there may be a third generation. Okay, but I don't know. I cannot say or deny right now, right? But
Yep.
I will say the way I was taught is that it takes all different kinds to love and promote pro wrestling. And there's all kinds of generations, and there's all kinds of eyes, and there's all kinds of ears. And the only way for things to grow is to educate and to broadcast about said event. Like I use this all the time. Barnum Bailey Circus used to come to town once a year, and it used to sell out. And I'm telling you right now, I have not even heard of a circus coming, right? You know,
Yeah.
right? Harlem Globetrotters, I love them. They used to come to town every month. They're still around, but you never hear about them. And let me say this: it's because there's not enough people keeping the dream alive and talking about it. And so I enjoy all types of broadcasts. I get the old school people, I get the new school people, I get all kinds of different broadcasts. And the reason why I give back and do some podcasts is yes, there are sometimes financial reasons, and I enjoy it. But I will tell you this: I take on more podcasts per podcast that I'll do. Like if I say, "Hey, I'm going to do 3 podcasts this month, or 4 podcasts," I do more across a different demographic in the hopes that what I'm doing right now is I'm helping promote pro wrestling. We're going to make someone a new a new fan. You're the next generation. You know, you may be the next Vince McMahon. You may own, you may go and own a federation. You might be the next Jim Ross doing color commentary. You might be the next whatever you want in pro wrestling, and you're building yourself, and you're building and showing your respect for pro wrestling at the same time of promoting pro wrestling, and I appreciate it. So I want to thank you for having and setting goals, and it's pretty impressive that you can take the time to organize all the things you do in your personal life and put together a podcast and rock it. And it not just anyone, not anyone just messages someone or tries to get a hold of someone and says, "Hey, by the way, would you be on my podcast?" That doesn't happen much. You know what? You're the first person in whatever grade you're in. you're the first person minus 30 years old that's ever asked me to be on a podcast, and so that should say good stuff about you. And so you asked me one last question or whatever, but I want to tell you, pro wrestling's in good hands and podcasting's in good hands, and don't worry about your internet, man. When you get enough likes and enough views, you can buy your own studio.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to reach for, is to get better stuff for my studio. And
Good.
thank you very much for all that kind of stuff. So I do got one last question for you.
Hit
So, do you have any advice for me to become a wrestler?
it. If you want to be a pro wrestler, I think that today's world it's much more difficult because um, I think becoming a pro wrestler first should start the way you are starting. You're doing a podcast, right, which allows you a view into all different genres, right? You got different
Yep.
wrestlers, you got different entertainers coming on. Okay.
Yep.
You're also learning to work a little under pressure because not every match goes right. Okay. Internet connection fails in a match sometimes, right? So,
Yeah.
so you studying it, you learning it, and you being a fan is the first most important thing because you're building a respect for what you may want to do. But the second thing is to find people that won't take advantage of you to teach you the art of pro wrestling. And that's the scariest thing that um, that's the scariest thing for me, that anyone that asks me, because I have had people ask me, "Hey, so Erik, where would you send me to learn pro wrestling?" I'm like, I don't even know of a good pro wrestling school anymore. I just don't, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
Ricky or Robert, Ricky Gibson or Robert or Ricky Morton, one of those guys had a school there for a while. I just saw an advertisement where um, Sarge, Kiwi, and someone else are going to do like a 1 day training in Carrollton, Georgia, or a 2 day training for people that just want to show up. And they might be able to, maybe they're trying to find an audience. Big Boss Man, he used to run a school out here in Atlanta. And you could send someone there and know that they weren't going to be taken advantage of, because a lot of times it's a business for these people. It's how much can I make? Do I really care if you can make it? And that's the problem. Um, you have to find a place to train, and not just one place. And you need to find several places. And you also, if you want to become a pro wrestler, you have to know where you can train to where you can be in a show and protect your opponent and protect yourself, but you got to get in front of a live audience.
Yeah.
And yes, you know, you know, people go, well, I have seen some indie shows. Some people have sent me some tapes of indie shows. And I'm gonna tell you what, if those people can't kill the business, the ones they've shown me, no one can kill it, right?
Yep.
What I give kudos to is those that have the gumption enough to go out there to learn it, not to go back and tell someone they're a pro wrestler. And someone that understands that it still is an art form. It's more choreographed today than ever, but that doesn't mean that you still don't have to understand the that does not mean that you don't have to understand the business, because you have to understand what it is to treat your body right, stay healthy, learn, stay humble, entrance, loss, finishes, and all that. And so the biggest thing is, I would say, you've got a great start. The toughest thing is, what school of wrestling are you going to find to get your education? That's the tough one.
All right.
I don't know how much of that you caught, but the recipe is first the heart and the will and the want, but the second is you got to go. You got to find the education. You got to find the tree of knowledge, and remember that tree of knowledge for whatever you're trying to find. I think people think they want to go and there's like a tree trunk. A tree is just it. There's branches, right? So you've got to
Yeah.
find people one at a time in order to educate you. But in today's world, the cool thing about today's pro wrestling, really, there's a million people that want to pro wrestle. I promise you. It's the people that say, I have something to show that's different. That's that and you got to have a character or a look or a drive or something that translates through a TV set to people to say, I don't know what it is about that person, but I like them, or they're interesting, or they do something. I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many people have failed because they freeze, right? They just freeze. They're like, well, I know everything about wrestling. I don't know how to act, or I don't know who to be, you know?
Yep.
And it's brutal. There's wrestlers I've named, and there's guys I could name. They could out wrestle greatest mechanical wrestlers ever and freeze on the mic. Freeze. Or they have no pizzazz, or they have no difference or no swag. And I'm telling you, painful. I will not name names out of respect, but
Yeah.
you can ask some of the boys, and there are wrestlers that never made it past mid card, and
Yep.
they should have been world champions, but they couldn't. They had no character. They were just another guy in boots and trunks that were great in the ring, but the people go, I need something more than that.
Yep.
So you got to have the it factor. You got to find out what the it factor is for you, and then you got to make it happen, and nothing can stop you. But that's in everything and anything, and you got to have the want, right?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, everyone can talk about it, you know. But if you want something in life, right, you got to find a place to learn it, and you got to want it, and you got to be willing to pay, the price to do it. Because if it's a dream, what's not worth doing and trying if it's your dream, right?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's it. So I don't know, bro. I'm sure there's some good people up there in Wisconsin somewhere. you know, um, I'm sure there is.
Yeah, there's not mu many training schools down here in Wisconsin
Yeah.
specifically. Um, there was one in Green Bay that just came to Green Bay most recently. Um, but otherwise, probably the closest is in Minnesota with Mr. Kennedy.
Oh God. Yes. That
Yeah,
that dude, that dude's awesome, man.
yeah. I told my parents about that one. I mean, it's a possibility, but otherwise, I'm thinking about probably doing the Green Bay one.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know, the Green Bay and what that has to offer, but Kennedy knows wrestling, respects wrestling, and he's an artist, man. So, but distance and price, I don't know what that is, but he for sure would be a good one to learn from. But remember what I said. Yeah, you got to go learn from him, and then you got to learn from someone else, and you got to learn from someone else, and you have to envision. Okay, so when you go to the school, you know what are you going to say to him? What are you going to do that's different, right? Other than if he charges for you to be there, and hey, you're 15 years old, fantastic, right? But
Yeah.
you need you minus being 15 years old and wanting to be a pro wrestler, right? You to me, and without like being a mark for him per se, have a respect for him and be able to explain what you respect and why you want to be there. Uh, anyone listens to that, right? Right? Like I've trained
Yep.
people. Dusty Rhodes had me train people. Uh, um, when I was injured, Jay Leno, I trained Jay Leno for his celebrity match. I trained Dennis Rodman. I trained Carl Malone. Because I was injured, and people asked me, Hulk Hogan asked me, or Dallas Page asked me to train certain people, right? So I put the time in because I was injured. But I wanted to keep active. Um, but man, it's those guys that would have something to say to me, like at Dusty Rhodes School. It was everyday people that was just showing up. But man, I could tell the difference between the people that were just there because they wanted to tell someone, or they wanted to say, "Well, I think I want to do this." Like I think I do. I can tell the difference between those people and say, "I don't care what it takes. I'm going to make it happen." And I'm not going to make it happen by just saying and whining and complaining. I'm going to show up, and I want to learn everything. I want to be astute. I'm in this. There is no choice. This is what I want to do. You do that around the right people, man, and you'll get the right attention. Even training schools, I don't care what training school it is. The good guys want to train the guys that want to be pro wrestlers. So you can have 20 students, and all of a sudden you're going to find out that this guy's going to, this guy or girl is going to spend a little bit more attention with this person or this person. Well, I was trying to say this the other day. Anyone that truly cares about what they're doing, um, the greatest compliment to them is handing it off to someone else.
Hmm.
So if people are into training to make money, okay. But if you get with an artist that he wants to help produce other artists, that's who you want to be with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much for all of the advice and everything, and thank you for taking thank you for taking your time out to do this.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely, man. When you keep building that studio and stuff like that, you hit me up again when you want your next interview and our podcast, and we'll knock it out.
What? Sorry you cut out there.
I said It was good being on here, and I don't mind giving advice. I really enjoyed it. I said, a matter of fact, as you grow your studio and as you grow your podcast, don't be a stranger. Hit me up, and we'll do this thing again. Shoot, maybe next time we talk, you might be 6 months, a year from now, and maybe you could do a live podcast from Kennedy's school over there, and we can all three get on the podcast and talk about you and what you got going on in pro wrestling, man.
Yeah, of course, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my man. Well, there's your goal.
Yep. Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Have a blessed night too, my friend.
Yep. You too. See you.